welcome to the Art of Being Human. Today, as I've said before, I want to start a special study on attachments and what they mean. I know if you've been watching this show regularly, you have heard me talk about attachment disorders, where people do not attach to other people, and that causes them to have some serious mental health issues. Sometimes they just can't attach. Sometimes they won't attach. So I want to take a look at this because it's an area that we need to look at to understand how it is that people attach themselves to others and things and groups of people and philosophies, and what that means in terms of mental health. And it means a lot in terms of mental health, because if you can attach yourself in a healthy way to other people, to friends, to organizations, to groups of people, to clubs, then you're going to have much better health, mental health, than if you can't attach, if you don't attach, if you decide you don't want to attach, and therefore separate yourself from other people, and so therefore you don't have the advantage of getting different viewpoints, of being friends with people. So that's what I want to get into today. Attachments. Now, one definition of an attachment is that it's an affectionate kind of an affectionate tie between people. But it's not just people that we attach ourselves to. We can attach ourselves, of course, to family members, friends, philosophies, organizations, careers. A lot of your friends are going to be people who work in the same way as you do. Things that you can own, you can be attached to your collections. A rock collection, stamp collection, doll collection. I know someone who collects elephants. You know, you attach yourself to various things, and these things become important to you. It binds people together. You're going to be attached to people who have a similar career. If you're a physician or a nurse, who are your friends going to be? Other physicians and other nurses. If you're a teacher, who are your friends going to be? Other teachers. Any people that you work with on a career basis or on a job basis, you're going to be friends with them. And as you are friends with them, this forms your social milieu. It forms who you know, and also determines your social status. Because as a college professor, I knew a lot of people that were college professors. They were my source of friendships, and that's important because we had our own kind of society. And children, who do they know as friends? Well, it's going to be other children that they meet on the playground. In order for a person to have good mental health, they need to attach themselves in a healthy way to a lot of things. And I know one way of knowing if a child is healthy is if they are attaching to friends, if they have good friends, if they like to have their friends over to the house, if they like to invite friends for supper, if they like to have birthday parties. You know, all of these things are very, very healthy things. You learn how to handle yourself socially. You learn how to handle other people and how to handle yourself around other people. And all of that is a sign of your mental health. You know, some people just don't know how to act around other people, and they don't act very appropriately around other people, and that's not good. That will hurt their mental health. Now, I think that some of it is genetic. I think some people are just more prone to have friends than others, and I don't want to leave a false impression here. Some children are shy just because they're shy. It's a part of their nature. Some people are quiet just because they are. It's a part of their nature. And I think there may be a genetic component to people who are shy, who are quiet, and there's nothing wrong with that. They can be perfectly healthy. They just are not socialites, so to speak. But most people do have a group of friends, and they attach themselves to a certain group of friends. I know my mother used to belong to a sewing club, and they used to meet once a month, and they used to make things, you know. And to them, that was important. It was a social thing, and it was important for them. So you can have healthy attachments. Unfortunately, you can have unhealthy attachments, too. A lot of bullies, for example, they attach themselves to other people that have bullying behavior. To them, that makes it normal. Well, I'm doing it, but other people are doing it, too. Some children who have problems will attach themselves to other humans who have problems, to other children who have problems. And so they have kind of a core group of people who get themselves in trouble all the time. And that's not good. So you have to, as adults, monitor who your children are friends with, not to break up friendships, but just to monitor and make sure that the friendships are healthy friendships, that they're having a good time, that they're treating each other well. You know, being a parent is a full-time job, and working with them and ensuring that they're all right, it's a full-time job. Your child may have friends, but you want to make sure that they're friends that don't get into trouble, and that they are healthy friends, and they have healthy relationships. So all people attach themselves, if they're healthy, to something. And the only people that really don't attach to anything are those that have certain mental disturbances, but we'll be getting into that later. The attachments will bind people together. They will help people to interact together, and they'll help children to interact with adults as well as other children. There are some children that really want to interact with adults, that to them interacting with adults is important, and I think that's a good thing, but they also need to interact with children their own age. I can remember when I was young, of course I was always musically inclined. My father was a musical genius, and we did a lot of work musically. I played in the bands that he played in, but I used to love to practice. I was one of those kids that could practice hours a day and be very happy and content just practicing my instruments. And then my father would come to me and say, "You've practiced enough. You need to go out and play with other children like yourself." And he would insist on that. But see, he kept an eye on things, and that was important. And I did go out and play with other children, and I did have friends. But he didn't want me to get out of balance and do so much practicing that I didn't have friends, that I neglected friendships. He knew how important that could be. So I'm thankful that I had parents that tried to make sure that I had a balanced kind of life, and as parents you need to do that. I guess I turned out all right. Let me give you another definition, another definition of attachments. An attachment is an enduring emotion, a connection between people. It gives a desire for contact, and it's distressing to be separated. So let me kind of repeat that again. It's an enduring emotion, a connection between people. It gives a desire for contact, and it's distressing to be separated. That's what an attachment with another person should be. Something that's enduring, something that's real, something that will last. Now you have secure attachments, and these are healthy attachments with parents. Healthy parent-child connections where the child feels secure and when the parents are there, and they feel comforted when the parents are there. That's called a secure attachment. You do have insecure attachments, which aren't so good. If I can get this page down here. An insecure attachment is when there is a troubled connection between a child and a parent. It's not a healthy connection, and the child becomes overdependent, and they have a lack of interest in the parent, and they don't explore their environment. Normal infants will attach to the parents. They attach young. They like to be held. They like to be cuddled. That's very important to them. They attach to their parents. If for some reason there's a problem between the parent and child, usually because there's something wrong with the parent, not the child is going to be innocent. But if there's a problem in a connection between the parent and the child, you would think the child would want to leave the parent. You would think they would want to run away. And in many ways they do. They want to leave the relationship and they want to run away, but they don't. What happens is they become overdependent. They don't feel secure with the parent. So if they don't feel secure with the parent, they become overdependent on the parent. You might think that there would be something else that would happen instead. I don't care for you. I don't trust you. I want to be away from you. And inwardly they might feel that, but they don't have the inner strength to do anything. So they become overdependent upon the parent. You know, I don't care for you, but I need you. Don't do anything to me to hurt me. I need you. You know, don't say goodbye to me, don't separate from me. Those children oftentimes are afraid of losing a parent. They're afraid the parent will go and they will be lost, or they'll be in an accident, or they'll die, or something will happen to them. And then as a result of that, they just hang on to the parent even more so. As a result of their insecurity, they hang on to the parent and they become over-dependent upon the parent. So in a normal relationship, the child does not become over-dependent. They trust the parent, they feel secure with the parent, and what they're going to do is they're going to grow normally. And as they grow normally, they gradually become independent, more and more so as they grow up to the point where they can be independent. And then they can do that successfully, and they can remain friends with their parents, but they don't have to be, you know, kind of hanging on all the time. That's normal behavior. So if you have a child that's over-dependent and they don't really have any interest in their parent, but they're afraid of losing them because they're over-dependent. This is a phenomenon that we see in children who do not have happy home lives. They just hang on to the parent and hang on to the parent because they're searching for a security that isn't there. And there's no place else they can search because they're a child and the parent is the only one that can give them the security, but they don't feel secure, so they hang on even tighter. It's an important concept to understand. Normal infants will attach to the parents easy and naturally, but there are some physiological conditions where that might not occur. And we see it a lot in autism, where the child does not want to be held, while the child does not want to be cuddled, and they don't want to be held. And so what they do is they stiffen up. A parent will pick them up and they'll stiffen. Usually if you pick a child up, they relax in your arms and they just let you hold them. But that's not the way it is for children with autism. So we have to consider the fact that in any kind of an insecure attachment, there may not be so much a problem with the parents, but there could be a problem with the medical condition of a child. It all plays in together. There might be something wrong with the parent, that they don't trust the parent might be abusive, or something else might be going on. But at the same time, it may be that the child themselves have a medical problem. And if you take a very young child, one that hasn't been able to run around and do the things that are normal for a child just simply because of their age, and you pick them up, and suddenly they stiffen and they don't want to be in your arms, that's a clue. That's a clue that there may be some underlying medical condition. In an insecure relationship, babies will be nervous. Babies won't explore their environment. They won't want to crawl around. They'll cry very loudly when the mother leaves because the mother is the security that they're hanging on to, even though they don't feel secure. And this seems like I'm talking opposites. A child doesn't feel secure, so they grab onto the parent for security. The parent isn't giving them the security, so they hang on all the harder. Now, it doesn't seem logical, it doesn't seem natural, it doesn't seem like that's what would happen, but that does happen, because where is the child going to go? How is the child going to feel secure? If they don't feel secure, they're going to try harder to get the security from the very person who's not giving it to them, because they have no other place to go. So I think, although it sounds like I'm talking about two opposites that can't be, the fact is it exists, it coexists. So the babies will be nervous, the babies won't explore, they will cry loudly when the mother leaves because their security is gone, but they're not comforted when the mother comes back. They're ambivalent, they're disoriented, they want closeness, but then they turn away. So whatever you expect, they turn away from because they just can't handle what's going on. It doesn't make any sense rationally. If you try to make anything rational out of something that is the basis of some mental illnesses, it's not going to work. Why don't you love a person that cares for you? If the person is abusive, you can't love them, and at the same time, you have to hang on to them because you have no place to go. So you have to try to be what they want you to be, to do what they want you to do, because that's the only security you have, even though you don't feel secure. Does it sound confusing? Of course it does. Does it sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth? Well, of course I am. But the truth of the matter is this is what's happening to young children who do not have any sense of security with their parents, either because their parents are absent a lot, or their parents are abusive, or their parents clearly don't understand them, or they feel they're in the way of the parents and there's no communication between them. You would think they would just be happy as time goes on to just separate, to run away. And yet those are the children that hang on the tightest to their parents because they're clutching for a kind of security that doesn't exist. This is very sad, but when you look at it, you can understand why an attachment disorder will occur here, and where they can't feel safe with their parents, but they've got no other place to feel safe. So they just hang in there. And as a result of that, they have emotional problems. Attachments may be good or they may be bad. They can be affected by the quality of care that a child has in infancy. You know, good quality care in infancy gives healthy attachments. Poor quality care in infancy gives poor attachments. By age 1, the quality of attachments determines the child's personality. I know in studying Freud and some of the other theorists, he believed that the basic personality patterns were laid down by age 5. In other words, what happens to you very, very young affects what your personality is going to be growing up. And you have to be able, as a baby, as a child, to bond early with people who love and care for you, and then your personality will grow normally. But if a child doesn't have a chance to bond with somebody who's healthy, if the person is inconsistent in discipline, inconsistent in what they teach, there's nothing steady about them, there's nothing stable about them, and the child is trying to bond with a person that's not stable, then they're not going to have a good, stable bonding experience. And what's going to happen is that's going to set a pattern for their personalities not to develop normally, and as a result of that, you can get personality disorders, and we will be talking about personality disorders. I'm going to kind of, condense them a little because they're complicated, but the personality of people that are not right, and you know they're not right, they don't act right, they don't look right, they don't feel right in themselves, and it can trace right back to the fact that the child did not have good bonding experiences when they were very young. So by age 1, the quality of attachments determines their personality, how they interact, whether they interact well or not, whether they're friendly, whether they ask for help when it's needed. Now, boys who have a poor attachment become aggressive, and they are the ones who will end up by possibly being bullies. Girls with poor attachments become overly dependent upon their parents. So girls act differently than boys do. If they can't attach right, they become overly dependent. The boys become aggressive. And the parents may excuse the aggressiveness by saying, well, he's a boy. Boys are like boys. Boys do boy things. But they need to look into it further. Is there something else going on? If the child can't bond correctly, they may become bullies, they may be assertive, they may be aggressive. Girls usually don't react that way, but boys do, and it's something to be watchful of. In daycare, when the mother leaves and comes back, it's a different social setting. So in daycare, a child has got to adjust to something completely different. They've got to bond in a different way, because if they're in daycare, somebody else is replacing their mother as their caregiver for a certain number of hours every day. And they have to be able to bond with the person who's taking care of them, even if it's a teacher or somebody who's just running a daycare center, who becomes kind of like a substitute mother. So the daycare issue. If a child is not being taken care of by their own parents, that becomes an issue in terms of how they bond and how they learn how to bond. And if they have a healthy relationship with their mother, then they're free to explore new environments, even daycare. If they don't have a healthy relationship with their mother, then daycare is more frightening to them because they become over-dependent on the mother who they can't depend upon, which makes it harder for them to bond to anybody else in a caregiving environment, including daycare. I know this sounds kind of complicated, but it actually does happen. And I want to take you back to the child development and what happens that causes people to be who they are. We will be getting into personality disorders as time goes on, sooner probably than later. And I'm going to close it here because we're about out of time. We'll continue with this next time. Please join me then.